Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick. So the Ignite Your Life Conference Part 2 that just happened last Saturday on the 29th of February was spectacular. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I saw a few miracles happen. And some of you might switch off immediately and say, miracles, screw this. There's nothing substantial with this talk today. But there is. So this discussion will be around the belief systems that are ingrained in our brain. So as we grow up, we formulate coping skills. For example, how to open a jar. You learn by watching Dad, and you learn that if it's too tight, you get this rubber thing and it opens it. How to start a car when we're older, how to drive on the right side, how to throttle the accelerator pad to not get in an accident. So we all know these things. There are also basic things like move away from pain and hunt for hunger. So the thing is, as we get older, sometimes we run into injury, we run into conflict, and those are usually a very loud information input into the brain. So for example, in Iraq or in Afghanistan, if you have somebody in the military fighting a skirmish, and then there's a loud bang, and then a friend dies, that loud bang will be associated with a friend dying, which is very traumatic in the heart and in the brain. So that gets hardwired, and we always remember loud bangs as very traumatic events. So that's the beginning of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, that's a spectacular magnification of what average person will, and thank God we have our armed service guys helping us, taking care of us. But sometimes something as easy as a bully. So if you're going around the corner and you're taking a shower in the gym locker room, I'm making this up, and then somebody towel snaps you and then makes fun of you, or pulls down your pants and makes fun of you in front of a large crowd, for example, that will be associated with, ooh, that was embarrassing. For some people, that will be associated with terrible embarrassment, and the same hardwired amygdala alarm will be turned on in another person. And that will be hardwired so that every time you get in front of an audience, you think somebody's going to pull down your pants, or towel snap you. So those things become, as we get older, they become ingrained, so that it's hard to shake off. Even with the coping skills that, I'm in front of a crowd, I'm not going to have my pants pulled down, or I know it's an explosion, I'm not going to lose my friends, this is the real world. But still, something comes up where that alarm turns on at the wrong times, and it initiates a terrible reaction, usually pain or emotional response, almost exactly like the day that it happened the first time. So fast heart rate, racing thoughts, shortness of breath. So how do we take care of that? Like post-traumatic stress disorder or episodes of bullying, we go through therapy. We work with counseling. Now, depending on how severe will be how intense we dive into therapy, whether it's a meditation for very entry-level stuff, yoga breath and a class for really easy stuff, or something as intense as psychology or an outpatient design with a psychiatrist too. So the problem I'm bringing up now, or what I've noticed that happened on Saturday, was I had a couple patients that have been suffering from chronic pain, chronic trigger point, chronic knee pain, chronic shoulder pain, chronic back pain, or chronic headaches. So the few that I saw at the Ignite Life conference, I had one in particular that came up to me in the beginning of the conference and said, I just wanted to say hello and hope everything's going well. I'm supporting you, but I can't stay because I have the typical pain that we are dealing with. And I just said to that one person, hey, just stay. You don't even have to go into downward facing dog, get on your knees, get on the mat, just listen in the back of the class. And then when it comes to the next transition into resistance training, I had 3 blocks of exercise. First one was yoga, second one was resistance, third one was mat work. And they were supposed to be 15 minutes each, but they extended because we needed instruction, but it was really cool because everybody engaged. It was so cool. So cool to see my trainers. I'll talk about that in a second. But One patient I was talking to, I said, just sit for the resistance training, just watch everybody move. And then for the mats, you can sit in the back. Just listen, because there's healing aspects to to being in the crowd when you're in a large group. There's also healing aspects when you just listen. You can even close your eyes. Listen in the yoga class or in the resistance to the cues, and you will get fired up. Your emotions in yoga will be calm. Your emotions in the resistance class will be fired up, and endorphin will be turned on, even if you just watch. Kind of like the idea about an act of kindness. When you have a hug, or when you have a pet that hugs you or licks you or greets you, it's kind of cool. When you witness that too, that's just as cool. So endorphin and enkephalins in exercise, those are the hormones. Serotonin and oxytocin are in love. And again, when you have something done to you, that's really cool, an act of kindness, you feel good. But when you witness something and listen, you'll also, I mean, how many times you watch a veteran coming over from Afghanistan after being gone for 2 years, and the kids hug and they cry, it kind of chokes you up, because there's visual and auditory stimulation that makes you feel good. Well, you can do that in a class too. And that's the power of the brain. So this is the first part of having a belief system turn on. So the positive part of this is that if you could have a really good belief system that will take you back to loving kindness, something that happened really cool in your life, you will feel good. But if you hold on to that idea, if you have a chronic pain issue and you remember getting on your knees resulted in 3 days of pain and my swelling of my knee, and I couldn't get up and I had to go to the doctor's office and get a shot, get an x-ray, go to immediate care center, that's the terrible encounter that you had. That'll be a negative or nociceptive problem. So the brain, even though you know you're not injuring your knee, the brain can tell you, oop, I'm having knee pain. It's going to be just like 2006 when I fell on my knee. Or again, you can say, I got that hug and I witnessed the hug and I felt just as good as I got that hug in 2014. So the brain with its belief systems can work in a positive way. They can all work in a negative way. And with people who have chronic pain, it's very easy. I have fibromyalgia. I don't have a problem with disclosing that. I have a trigger point right here, and every time it turns on, I have it under control, but if it turns on, it accelerates to the head, gets to the point of headache, nausea the next day, and it's terrible. Or here's one. I remember having an episode of amoebiasis. That's a parasite in the Philippines. I had the nastiest pain in the belly and bloody stools. But I almost passed out on a toilet in the hospital. And I had to call one of the other medical students to help me up. And I was admitted to a hospital. So every time I have either this trigger point turn on or a belly cramp, I immediately go back to my worst experience that happened almost 3 decades ago. And it brings me to pain. So the same intensity as my first experience, whether it's this or my belly pain. So that belief system in my brain is the bad way. I believe that any cramp, for example, with the belly, any cramp is going to put me right back to the tenesmus and the amoebiasis. Oh, I've got amoeba again. And I'm going to pass out again. But obviously I don't have amoebiasis in Bartlett, Illinois, and I'm not going to pass out, but I can mimic the same emotional response, belly pain, the dry mouth, the sweatiness, the dizziness right before the event. So that happened 3 decades ago. So that's a bad belief system that will keep me from experimenting with certain foods, for example, which is a shame. But the same thing can happen in patients with chronic pain, because if you try to move a little bit in a yoga class they haven't attended ever before, or a little exercise in a resistance circuit training routine, sometimes if you have and you hang on to that belief system that this is going to result in 1 week of pain and a trip to the emergency room, then it starts to initiate pain and spasm of muscle, and you start to walk with a limp. So that is what usually is a deal breaker for introducing exercise. And that's the worst thing we can have, because that belief system makes you stiffer, makes you avoid the actual therapy that you need. Stiff joints need mobility. Weak muscles need strengthening. So if you avoid the activity that fixes, because of that bad experience from before, you'll get tighter and tighter and weaker, and they'll have more pains to other areas. So you can see the acceleration that happens when you withdraw from movement due to pain or the anticipation of pain. That belief system is negative. So the idea that, or not the idea, but what I witnessed on Saturday was that one person was able to, I saw her in the yoga class, just hang out in the back, but then I saw her in the resistance group training routine that we did, and she was moving. And then I saw her on the mats, it was a little bit off the side, but she was engaging. And then the next day I saw that one person come up to me in the parking lot and say, no pain. And I'm thinking, that person hasn't exercised in so long, well, hasn't really dove into rehab, but she tried it, she gave it her all, broke the belief system, engaged because of the power of the group. And I tell you, the group was really on fire. It was led by 4 trainers, and there's about 40 people that were rotating, really engaging, having fun. I think that broke the belief system. So because it broke the belief system, there was a rewiring, a new belief system that came in, took over, trumped the old one, and then we had positive response and success. That's a miracle, because it's so hard without going to therapy and counseling and introspection to figure out how to remodel the belief system. Tony Robbins talks about this with business all the time. If you're walking around like this, if you have a morning that starts with sorrow, then you're going to have the entire day as sorrowful. You're not going to get engagement. You'll feel lousy. There are some studies that show if you take a Superman pose in the beginning of the day for 2 minutes, it increases endorphin and enkephalin, cortisol, testosterone. I'm not sure if it does that. The studies are kind of iffy. However, hey, the downside of doing a Superman pose every morning for 2 minutes to change the belief system, to change that I'm so tired to I am on fire. There's no downside. I mean, there's no side effects to doing a pose like this. I've done it with my police officers and my firefighters in Older College of DuPage. They say, do this for about, if you don't want to meditate, don't want to do yoga, just do this for about 2 minutes. And it has worked. Just like if you're on Facebook and you watch my smile video, if you hold I found one way to take advantage of chopsticks. You hold them like this in the morning just to get your face to almost fake smile, and your emotions will start to, after about 2 minutes, parts of the brain will start to be happy. It'll light up parts of the brain that are usually responsible for being happy. It's like this. So same thing can happen with the belief system. So you're actually using your physicality like this to fake smile because you're holding this thing in your teeth, and your emotions start to roll just like you're actually laughing or having a smile. Same thing with this. The Superman pose where you're looking off in the distance, you're like chest out. It's in yoga, it's a warrior pose. Yoga is warrior pose 2, Superman pose. So you just hold that. The body changes its chemistry versus looking down like this and walking like you just lost something. The body changes its chemistry to ignite something different. So it will empower you to change. So the idea with what to do with a belief system, I think that if it's ingrained like PTSD, you really need help, because just doing a yoga pose like this or a Superman pose or using the chopsticks might not beat the PTSD thing. But if you're an average American, sometimes, and you have average pain, like most Americans, low back or knee, sometimes by engaging somebody or having a coach tell you, listen, don't do it that way. I witnessed this. In fact, here's a quick story. I wanted to run the class, has my resistance class in the Ignite Your Life event, has 15 minutes of hell. I was going to take everybody through, but there were 40 people, so I had to break up, and I had to be the team captain and watch the 4 other trainers at Endorphin Effect take over. I put trainers in different corners of the room, and we circulated and have 5 stations. And they did so good, and they engaged patients so well. I mean, people were really kind of listening in and watching. they engaged. I just let go. I just timed everybody. So I let it run for more than 15 minutes, but everybody was cool and I saw beads of sweat. So it was movement and it was engaging and people did fine. No injuries. So I think that when you are fired up, you can get a workout in and you won't be focusing on, I'm going to spasm this, I'm going to flare up my belly, my knee pain's going to flare up, and my back pain's going to flare up. But it really takes an overwhelming amount of force in the emotional and intellectual part of your brain, data, input. It takes a lot of encouragement to overcome the old belief system. So you can call it belief system, you can call it mindset, you can call it cognitive coping skills, whatever it is. The little circuit that was embedded a long time ago because of pain or when you're growing up has to be encouraged to be quiet. But the only way to encourage it to be quiet is sometimes having a good coach give you other options. If the brain is given other options, it can be focusing on the new things, the new ideas, the idea that, hey, I'm going to be able to do this yoga and the resistance training without a problem. It will not spasm me up. I'll do fine the next day, and I can engage movement. So if you introduce that, instead of, this is going to flare up again, and you introduce it enough, it'll bury the other coping skill, belief system, so it actually becomes a dominant one. And that, in a nutshell, is what happens when you change around the way you think. This is one of my first my first ventures into mind-body medicine. I used to listen to Bruce Lipton all the time, over and over again, because it made a lot of sense, but it wasn't anything that we're taught in medical school, like a lot of stuff. But the biology belief essentially shows or evaluates the response you get when you have happiness, satisfaction, contentment. And if you've ever wondered how monks can do it, they do it because they're taught from an early age. You and I are, I'm a kind of advanced meditator, but I'm still working on it. But beginners do have a problem, and that's why I think the value of coaches is really important. Not only personal trainers as coaches, because they can tell you about the movement, how to compress the searching for an exercise routine just for you. Instead of 12 months, they can compress it into 12 weeks to give you satisfaction, weight loss, feeling better, and no injury. So the idea of having a coach even for psychology. So you can find your way as far as changing the belief system, but if you can't find your way, or if you want to speed up when you find this treasure, get a coach to teach you as far as physical, personal trainer, physical therapist. Get a coach to teach you as far as mindset, and be a psychologist or counselor. Get a coach to teach you as far as nutrition, which we didn't talk about. We talked about that in the first Ignite Your Life conference, and that'd be a dietitian, a life coach, sometimes even a nutritionist. So these coaches will help you make success out of your stuck point, whether it's weight, psychology, pain, relationship, business. Again, Anthony Robbins talks about this all the time. I think if you have a better leader, if you become the leader and you can control this dynamic business of yours, this body, which is really a miracle, you should be able to have it do miracles all the time, versus being a leader that's terrible and saying, okay, muscles are going to be flared up. We're not going to do anything today. You're not going to sell any products. You'll go bankrupt. Bankruptcy, as far as biological bankruptcy, is not good. Then you'll be into the medical paradigm of seeing a doctor, seeing a specialist, having surgery, having medicines, feeling bad from the medicines because you're getting side effects and needing a medicine for a side effect, having medicine side effects to the medicine side effect. It's terrible. The medical insurance now is fine, but it's disease management. If you want to reverse that and not see your doctor, but once a year, once every 2 years, you really have to have investment in exercise, mindful practice, essentially healthy lifestyle. And that's not the same thing as medical lifestyle. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of idea about how to change or start moving the stuck point, the importance of belief systems and mind, and the importance of improvement. I think most of us are content when we have forward movement, progress. Most of us are very unhappy. Even my business owners, when they have no progress in business, they know they're failing. They're looking for something else. My performers, my artists, when they're even if they've painted their great painting, they want to do more because they want to progress. They want to progress forward. So that's where I think most of us want to be. If you have progress, if you have other people with you, if you see success, you will invest even further and you'll see the rewards. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea. If you did attend the Ignite Your Life conference, put your comments down below of how you felt after being empowered. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next tutorial.